Hello everybody, so today I have a very important video. Today I'm going to be discussing the symptoms, causes, and what to do about these Nintendo DS original consoles that are exhibiting what I like to call metallic plastic syndrome. The definition of metallic plastic syndrome is when your Nintendo DS original console typically has the hinge completely broken and or has other damage on the shell typical of plastic degradation. This is very common on these original Nintendo DS consoles due to some manufacturing preferences, which I'll get to later in this video. But to simply put it, this is a very common thing that happens with metallic painted electronic devices from the early 2000s. This results in extreme damage to such things as mechanical hinges just like this, where it's completely separated and nothing is holding it together. This console does actually still work perfectly fine, which is the complete purpose of this video, to demonstrate that something can be done about this. The common misconception I'll see is that it was a manufacturing defect on Nintendo's side, and that these original Nintendo DS consoles are complete pieces of trash due to that point. However, today I'm going to prove why that is not the case. My most glaring example is these two Nintendo DS consoles. This one here has a perfectly fine hinge and is not going to break with any usual kinds of pressure. This hinge is still going to be fine. As you can see, it still snaps in the place very good, and it has no problems whatsoever. However, you've probably already noticed the problem here. If you haven't already, let me see if you can see now. Look carefully here. See how the edges of this console has this yellowish sort of tint to it? It's very, very glaringly obvious on the hinge. Especially if I close it, you can definitely see the difference there. That yellow tint is indicating that this plastic is brittle. That essentially means the base plastic layer of this shell has yellowed over time. But it's not only just yellow. That means that it's chemically reacted with this metallic paint layer over top and has made this underlying plastic, the actual main plastic, extremely brittle. Especially when it's starting to wear through, this shell is gone. And even though you could technically, hypothetically repair it, paint it, cover it up, that is not what to do in this case. While it seems still fine, and it's still clicking and it holds in place, if you attempt to disassemble this console, it will shatter. Some piece of plastic, at least some screw post or a clip will break, and this has happened to me several times. This console needs a complete shell replacement. A perfect example are these two blue DS originals. This one here was in mint condition. The hinge barrels were extremely quiet. It snapped with complete ease and had no problems whatsoever. However, I tried to take the top screen out of this one that has a bad bottom screen and to transfer it into this unit, and both just disintegrated. The entire top half of this console just crumbled into shards. It was extremely sad to see, but as it stands right now, it's still fully functional. It just needs a new housing. This one here is missing the original screen because I just decided to toss it away since I do not need it, but this console can still be restored. Do you see here how in this hinge, it's kind of a more greenish color? It's a lot more of a teal green. This is supposed to be just like a light blue, whereas you can see here, it's kind of more like a light blue kind of in that crack a little bit, but you can see it sometimes through the spray paint. But here's a much better example. These here are Graphite Black units. As you can see, this one, it's pretty much a very light color, very similar to the paint overall. However, this MPS ridden unit here, it's a much more greenish, yellowish color. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes, but that is a clear indication of metallic plastic syndrome. As you can see, this one is still very solid, and this one I might refurbish in its original shell. It's still very solid, and it has a few years left in its lifespan on its shell, but as soon as it starts to show this sort of discoloration, especially this one here is extremely scratched for some reason. I'm going to restore this one eventually, but you can just kind of tell that the shell is weaker. It's just not holding up very well. As for this one though, that opens a lot of confusion because this one didn't have that problem. This one didn't show any signs of metallic plastic syndrome. This one is still in very good condition overall, but it's still disintegrated. But if you look very carefully here, there is a bit of that greenish in the hinge. It's hard to see, but this unit is showing it internally, which that's the problem. If it's showing externally like this one, that's not a great sign whatsoever. Even if it's not showing it, it still is going to break. It's very unfortunate, but the only solution here is to swap the entire shell. As you can see here, there's no signs of it even around this broken part in the corner. It's very unfortunate, but that's just how it's happening. This one here is the worst case of metallic plastic syndrome I have ever seen. This one is supposed to be as white as this badge. It's supposed to be a pearl white color. I had one that was actually still white. 9 out of 10 of these I have seen are mostly this shade of color, which is a very, very bad sign because this has happened. The entire side of the console has broken apart, exposing the actual motherboard. And this is very unfortunate. The entire hinge has broken to the point where the ribbon cable has torn completely into two, disconnecting the connection completely. And there's also some damage around the headphone jack. But if your console has this kind of yellowing damage to it and it still hasn't broken somehow, and even if, only this hinge is broken here, if anything has broken or chipped on it, or it's yellowed whatsoever, the entire shell will unfortunately need to be replaced. I'm just going to give you the call right now that if it's even your childhood console or something you have a lot of sentimental value to it, the unfortunate bitter truth is that the shell will most likely crack during disassembly. If it's especially this top screen, you have to typically flex or use a tool to pry it out, and even doing that, the entire top shell has cracked on the left or right side for me. And in this case, this console is going to need a new housing. In the past, I've attempted it, and it's somewhat gone successfully by just taking this top shell off and being super careful, but it's honestly not worth it. As in the end, if you drop it once, and eventually it will just crack when opening it. While these things have definitely degraded to a point where the shells no longer have any structural integrity and it will just fall apart at some point, these consoles are still some of the most legendary hardware in gaming history, and the more we disrespect them, the more they're just going to end up in the trash and going to be ground into fine powder to be produced in the new electronics. And while that is good in some people's eyes, these are discontinued, and it's best we attempt to restore and get the last ones working that are still surviving out there, sitting in a box in someone's attic, or just simply being thrown around on eBay back and forth, getting parts slowly taken from it. These consoles definitely do deserve to be repaired and then be put back together. It is common misinformation that the replacement shells for these units are very poor quality. They're as good quality as the standard DS Lite, DSi, Game Boy Advance SP, and other Game Boy shells that have been on AliExpress for the past almost 10 years. These shells have improved. They're much better, and I made a whole 34-minute long video about how to replace your shell. I kind of discussed the symptoms there, but I thought this should be its whole own dedicated video on this topic. And you should really go watch that video if you want to replace your shell, if I've convinced you by now. But otherwise, I will go ahead and buy your console from you. I will not see these things be wasted, and if I have to put my foot forward to get something done about it, I will. And to stress the point, this here is my personal original Nintendo DS. This one is in fairly good condition. It's a rare blue North American unit, as most of these have been thrown away. And oh yeah, it's in really good condition overall. It's got some scratches and marks. I replaced the bottom shell with a really good one, but mine is even showing the metallic plastic syndrome. As you can see, a tiny dot of black paint down here is showing through the shell. And as time passes, this shell will just disintegrate, and I've accepted that. Especially right here on this right-hand side, it's very obvious. And while this is the bitter truth, we just have to accept that we have to take responsibility for repairing these things. And yes, this does not just stick at just the Nintendo DS original. This does go to the Game Boy Advance SP and other consoles that have had metallic paint put onto an ABS fire retardant plastic. That is specifically the definition of this plastic syndrome. And yeah, I understand that this was kind of a yap session, and I'm sorry for that, but okay, so here are the Nintendo DS consoles. These, I'm not going to really care about the diagnostics of them, but mainly the shell condition. First, I will disassemble the lesser MPS metallic plastic syndrome unit, and I will demonstrate to you what I mean. As usual, a Phillips one. Kind of recognize you need to kind of use the bigger size because it just gets a better bite on the screw. In the past, I suggested using like the 00. While it technically is a good fit, it's easier to strip the screws. And another fair point a person had commented, which I had misinterpreted them, is that these Y screws are not actually tri-wing. They're also known as tri-point, because technically tri-wing is a patented type of screw from a certain company. So tri-point is technically the right term. I've already demonstrated that sometimes when taking apart these metallic plastic syndrome consoles, the screw posts will just snap. Without any sign, without any clue, the screw posts here will just snap. These screw posts will be just snapped in two. And there's not a lot that can be done about it either. So anyways, let me just get this motherboard out of here real quick. That's what I mean. However, sometimes you have to do the other way, because not all the screws are going to fit perfectly either. Sometimes it being too big does mean it won't work, so you just have to be very careful and not hit it too hard. If one bit isn't working, try another size, either smaller or bigger. Just give it a couple others tries, and don't pushing harder, I've learned, is not the right decision. Okay, so I'm not gonna remove all the components, but I am going to demonstrate something. See here, if I take the plastic, I can put a pretty significant amount of pressure here. Just so you can see, I'm twisting and turning the entire shell, and I'm even putting enough pressure that I could break it. Like, I'm twisting the whole thing. As you can tell, the inside of the shell is nice gray color. So I'll set this aside here for a second. Let's disassemble the metallic plastic syndrome unit, because there's no other course of getting this out, as you could Dremel straight into the motherboard. No, don't put it back in. Okay, I got that one out, but that one's stripping, so I'm actually not going to reinstall that. That one was stripped before I got to it, so possibly somebody was in here. Okay, so you can kind of see that it's hard to tell, but this does have a slight more of a yellow tint to it. If I take the plastic here, just immediately, oh, it's just, I'm bending it in the exact same fashion as the other, and it already cracked right there. You can tell the whole mid panel just broke, and that wasn't even a lot of pressure, you know. But in order not to make this too much worse, I am going to reassemble this. Because having to bag this unit up would not be very fun, but I'll get that done off camera, you know what. But I would highly suggest attempting to disassemble your DS and give the shell like a bit of like about this much leeway. It's kind of hard to do on the bottom half. I'd suggest doing it on the top. Like, especially if you have to remove the top screen, I'd suggest opening it up, trying to replace the top screen in order to see if the shell's even brittle enough to do it. But if it's showing any yellowing, it's done for. But, yeah, that's going to conclude this video. I'll get this all put back together off screen. Next week, I have a video on this CRT monitor, a HP Pavilion M50, which I've had sitting around for a very long time, waiting to get its cut VGA cord replaced. And so I'm going to attempt to replace it. Yes, keyword attempt, because I'm unsure of the actual way I'm going to do it. But I have the equipment, and I'm going to be doing that next week. So anyways, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoy. Squirks out.